Well, first, I'm afraid we start the celebrations of Human Rights Day on a sad note. It's been a deadly Human Rights Day in Durban. 5 people have been killed in 2 separate shootings. First of all, in Springfield Park, 2 people believed to be a drug lord and his wife were killed in a drive-by shooting. An injured 9-year-old was rushed to hospital, but has sadly also passed away.
March 21st, 2023, Human Rights Day in South Africa. A day meant to celebrate freedom and dignity. But on Peters Road in Springfield Park, Durban, freedom dies in a hail of bullets. A black VW Amarok sits riddled with over 50 high-caliber rounds. Inside, 3 bodies. Brandon Puff Kalicharan, his wife Jeconiah, and their 9-year-old daughter Jakida. The child would have turned 10 in 5 days. This wasn't just another gang hit. This was the execution of Durban's most notorious drug lord, a man who built an empire on heroin and blood, a man who flaunted his wealth while his community drowned in addiction, a man who posted videos with assault rifles and cash, dancing to Bonnie and Clyde soundtracks with his wife. But how does a kid from the forgotten townships of Chatsworth become one of South Africa's most feared criminals? How does a community built on suffering become a breeding ground for monsters? And when the bullets finally find their mark, who really pays the price? This is the story of Brandon Kalicharan. The rise, the reign, and the reckoning. Chatsworth wasn't meant to be this way. Built under apartheid's Group Areas Act, it was a dumping ground for Indian families ripped from their homes in central Durban. They called the cramped public housing stables, concrete boxes stacked like livestock pens, far from jobs, far from hope. For decades, families here built something from nothing, created community from exile. Then democracy came in 1994, and with it, promises. But promises don't pay bills. The textile factories that employed thousands shut down when the ANC government slashed tariffs. Global competition crushed local industry. Suddenly, tens of thousands lost their jobs overnight. Affirmative action policies meant Indians struggled to find government work. By the late 1990s, unemployment in Chatsworth hit 70%. 70%. Young men who should have been breadwinners found themselves useless. Their father's generation had survived apartheid with dignity intact. This generation had democracy but no future. They weren't Indians anymore. They were, as one activist put it, the poors of Durban. Into this void stepped something darker. Traditional township drugs, daga, mandrax, gave way to something cheaper, deadlier. They called it sugars, a potent heroin mix that flooded the streets like poison. For the desperate, it offered escape. For the ruthless, it offered opportunity. Brandon Kalicharan saw opportunity. The early 2000s. Kalicharan is just another young man in Chatsworth, working at a clothing store called Fat Funk. The owner is Kelvin Kelly's Naidu, a flashy businessman who drives expensive cars and throws legendary parties. Everyone knows Kelly's is more than just a shop owner. The store is a front. The real business happens in back rooms and dark corners. Kelly's becomes Kalicharan's mentor, teaching him the rules of the game. Keep the police paid, control your territory, never show weakness. And above all, understand that in this business, violence isn't just a tool, it's the language everyone speaks. But Chatsworth's underworld is crowded. The Dre Boys gang, led by Duncan Arumagam, controls significant territory. Street corners become battlefields. Drive-by shootings become routine. Between 2003 and 2008, 16 drive-by attacks tear through Chatsworth. Mothers pull their children inside when cars slow down. Everyone knows the sound of automatic weapons. April 9th, 2008. The war reaches its crescendo. Kelvin Naidu is driving through Chatsworth when another car pulls alongside. The windows roll down. The guns come out. Kelly's dies in his seat, his empire suddenly headless. The Dre Boys claim victory. Duncan Arumagam and his crew celebrate the fall of their rival. But they've made a mistake. They've created a vacuum. And Brandon Kalicharan is ready to fill it. The police know who killed Kelly's. By 2010, Duncan Arumagam and his accomplices are serving life sentences. The Dre Boys are broken, their leadership rotting in prison. Kalicharan seizes his moment, but he doesn't just take over Kelly's operation, he revolutionizes it. Instead of fighting for street corners, He goes wholesale. Why battle for scraps when you can supply every dealer in Durban? He transforms the 11th Street Gang from neighborhood thugs into a distribution network. The sugars flow from his hands to every township, every corner, every desperate soul. The money is astronomical. Kalicharan buys houses on Train Road in Chatsworth, 3 properties, all fortified, all bearing the gang's mark. He opens a tavern that becomes his unofficial headquarters. He purchases cars worth millions, BMWs, Mercedes, vehicles that announce his arrival before he steps out. And he makes sure everyone knows it. This is the age of social media, and Kalicharan understands its power. He posts videos of himself with assault rifles, fanning cash like playing cards. In one notorious clip, he and Jeconiah dance in slow motion, guns in hand, Bonnie and Clyde playing in the background. Birthday cakes appear covered in fake dollar bills, emblazoned with 626, the Durban prison gang symbol that marks him as untouchable. The police watch, but they don't act. Sources later reveal what everyone suspected. Kalicharan has a lot of policemen in his pocket. It's an open secret at Chatsworth Station. The drug lord pays better than the government. But even kings need allies. Kalicharan reaches out to the Wentworth cartel gang, another powerful force in Durban's underworld. Their leader, Kyle Para Pretorius, appears in Kalicharan's videos, toasting their alliance. Together, they control the city's drug trade. Together, they seem invincible. The bodies pile up. When rivals challenge the 11th Street Gang, the response is swift and brutal. Drive-by shootings with military-grade weapons, AK-47s, R5 rifles. The gang doesn't just kill enemies, they send messages. Hundreds of rounds fired into houses, cars turned into Swiss cheese, families cowering as bullets tear through walls. 2020. The authorities finally decide enough is enough. The KwaZulu-Natal Anti-Gang Unit begins Operation Clean Sweep, targeting the 11th Street Gang. Intelligence gathering, surveillance, preparing for war against Kalicharan's empire, January 29, 2021. Before dawn, a massive multi-agency force storms Train Road. KZN Anti-Gang Unit, National Intervention Unit, Durban Metro Police. They come in hard and fast. Inside one of the houses, they find Kalicharan. He's arrested on suspicion of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. But on the way to the station, drama. Kalicharan collapses, claims a heart attack. He's rushed to the hospital. The case stalls. Once again, the kingpin slips through the system's fingers. 8 major charges over the years: drug trafficking, illegal firearms, attempted murder, murder. 8 times the police, unable to make any of these charges stick. The streets whisper about his invincibility. Some young men see him as a hero, a man who beat the system, who rose from nothing to everything. Community leaders plead with the media to stop glorifying him. Eugen Pillay, chair of the Chatsworth Community Policing Forum, warns that coverage of Kalicharan's fast life only creates more criminals, more violence, more death. But privately, even Kalicharan must sense the walls closing in. His ally Kyle Pretorius is gunned down on December 15, 2022. The Wentworth cartel boss dies in a hail of bullets, the alliance between gangs crumbling. The Underworld pact is breaking. Everyone knows that in this business, when your friends start dying, you're next. March 21st, 2023, 2:30 p.m., Human Rights Day. Kalicharan drives his white Amarok through Springfield Park, Jeconiah beside him, Jeconiah in the back. Perhaps they're heading home. Perhaps they're going shopping. We'll never know. The convoy appears suddenly. Multiple vehicles, coordinated, professional. They box in the Amarok. The windows roll down. The barrels emerge. Witnesses describe the sound as thunder that wouldn't stop. Over 50 rounds fired from automatic weapons. The Amarok's windows explode. The bullets tear through metal, glass, flesh. Brandon and Jeconiah die instantly. Jeconiah, 9 years old, is still breathing when the shooting stops. She dies on the way to the hospital. The killers vanish into the city. No arrests, no suspects named. Police Captain Robert Netshiunda tells the press that Kalicharan was a person of interest in multiple investigations, that he had many enemies. The official motive, unknown. The message, clear. 5 days later, March 26, 2023, Mobeni Heights Cemetery. 3 coffins descend into the earth. It would have been Jeconiah's 10th birthday. Instead of celebrating with cake and presents, mourners throw dirt on her grave. The crowd is smaller than expected. Many who knew Kalicharan stay away, afraid of being associated, afraid of being next. Those who come tell conflicting stories. Some remember a violent criminal who poisoned their community. Others recall surprising kindness, a young relative Kalicharan took in, paid school fees for, treated like a son. Both stories are true. That's the tragedy of men like Brandon Kalicharan. They're capable of love and monstrosity in equal measure. They kiss their children goodnight and order executions before breakfast. They build empires on the bones of their neighbors' children. The media calls him a kingpin, a drug lord, South Africa's Escobar. But strip away the sensationalism and what remains? A man from a forgotten township who chose violence over poverty, who built a kingdom of addiction and death, who died as he lived, in a storm of bullets, taking his family with him. Some blame apartheid for creating the conditions. Some blame democracy for failing to fix them. Some blame the police for corruption, the community for silence, the addicts for their weakness. Everyone has someone else to blame. But here's what we know. In Chatsworth today, the sugars still flow. Young men still post videos with guns and cash. Mothers still pull their children inside when cars slow down. The 11th Street gang finds new leaders. The cycle continues. Brandon Kalicharan is dead, but the system that created him lives on. In townships across South Africa, poverty and desperation breed new kingpins, new gangs, new wars. The names change, the drugs evolve, the violence adapts, but the story remains the same. Communities abandoned by history, young men with no future, and the terrible arithmetic of survival in forgotten places. The investigators never found who ordered the hit on the Kalicharan family. Maybe it was rivals seeking revenge. Maybe it was former allies fearing betrayal. Maybe it was the inevitable conclusion of a life lived by the gun. In the end, it doesn't matter. Justice and vengeance look the same from a 9-year-old's grave. What haunts me isn't how Brandon Kalicharan lived or even how he died. It's that photo from the burial, 3 coffins, different sizes, large, medium, small, father, mother, child. A family that could have been anything, buried together on what should have been a birthday. In Chatsworth, they don't call him Puff anymore. They don't call him anything. His name has become a warning, whispered to young men tempted by easy money and Instagram fame. Look what happens, the elders say. Look how it ends. But the young men see the cars, the cash, the power. They see 3 years of kingdom before the fall. And in a world that offers them nothing else, 3 years of being somebody seems better than a lifetime of being nobody. That's the real tragedy. Not that Brandon Kalicharan died, but that right now, in Chatsworth, in Wentworth, in townships across this country, young men are making the same calculation he made 20 years ago. They're choosing the gun over the grave of poverty. They're choosing to be kings of nothing rather than servants of less. And somewhere, a mother is checking her phone, hoping her son isn't in the latest video with guns and cash. Somewhere, a child is learning that daddy sells sugars. Somewhere, another Brandon Kalicharan is being born. The war continues. The only question is, who's next to fall? And when they do, will anyone remember their names? Or will they be just another headline, another statistic, another cautionary tale that nobody heeds? In the end, Brandon Puff Kalicharan got what every gangster gets: a violent death and a grieving mother. He thought he was writing his own story, but men like him always end up with the same ending. The only variable is who else they take down with them. His daughter would have been 11 this year. She never got the chance to become anything more than collateral damage in her father's war. That's his true legacy. Not the money, not the power, not the fear. Just a little girl who never made it to 10. Remember that when you see the next video of young men with guns and gold chains. Remember whose birthday became a funeral. Remember who really pays the price for kingdoms built on bullets and dust.